Okay, you're on. We're live. Okay, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's Investors Discovery Day live stream, January 27th, 2021. Welcome back. And for anybody that's new, what our program is about is bringing you those stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside potential. We've had a number of 10 baggers last year. We've had a number of stocks that are up, in the high triple digits already, in the recent weeks, weeks really. And so today we're going to introduce you to a new company, Novamind, and we're going to find out if Novamind is going to be that next 10 bagger. So I'm going to introduce you to Yaron Conforti, he's the CEO, and we're gonna have a quick chat and make sure to ask your questions because it's your questions that really make these events special. So please, check out the live stream, ask your questions, and then decide for yourself if Novamind is going to be our next 10 bagger. So Yaron, with that said, welcome to the program.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Here we go. Okay, so Yaron, as you heard, our audience, they're very spoiled. They've had a number of big winners in recent months. So, they want to know if Novamind is going to be that next, home run, that next 10x plus stock. So, let's find out. Tell us about what exactly does Novamind do in the psychedelic space? Let's start off with that.
Thanks, Jack. It's good context because I do understand that your investors are very involved in the psychedelic space. Of course, we're seeing a lot of capital flow into the space. We're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs and companies that are emerging. So Novamind specifically is a infrastructure company, and I want to make that differentiation for you and your guests, your listeners, excuse me. By infrastructure, I mean we operate a network of mental health clinics. So we are not drug developers. We're not in the lab hoping for the advent of psychedelic medicine and drugs that may or may not be available in the future. We are operating today with our 4 clinics. Just to give you an idea of the scale at which we're operating, we had over 20,000 client visits in 2020. Okay, and on a year-over-year basis,
with 4 clinics.
That's right, with 4 clinics. So on a year-over-year basis compared to 2019, that's about a double in the amount of client visits. And we've disclosed that publicly in a news release where we expanded one of our clinics. So that's information that's in the public domain. So we are operating at scale already, seeing many thousands of patients in those clinics. We're also operating a clinical research organization, which is also called a contract research organization. And that's the second pillar of our business. And that is called Cedar Clinical Research, whereas the mental health clinics are called Cedar Psychiatry. Those are the 2 brands. And Cedar Clinical Research, as opposed to mental health clinics where clients can come and access these alternative mental health modalities, the CCR component is to provide the clinical trial services to drug developers that want to develop those drugs. So world-leading pharmaceutical companies, academic institutions, not-for-profits, they will come to Cedar Clinical Research. We will, in some cases, design trials, or they'll design the trials. We will recruit patients in the Salt Lake City area where our clinics are based now, and we will run those trials for them and provide them with the data that they need to get through the FDA process.
Okay, so I think the takeaway is that you have 4 clinics right now, right? So that means you're generating revenues.
Absolutely. Just to be clear, again, our operating history in 2019, we were generating a couple $1 million of revenue profitably, and we're expecting that to expand fairly dramatically. Given what I mentioned on our existing network, we've doubled the amount of client visits. We're also growing the amount of clinics, both through M&A and organically. So that clinic business is really set for growth.
Okay, so before I ask you, like, exactly how far and how fast can you scale, what exactly happens in these clinics? Like, from it's what goes on there?
I'm glad you asked, because maybe some of your viewers will be familiar and some might not. So when you go to a typical outpatient mental health clinic, you'll be offered services like cognitive behavioral therapy, maybe prescription management by a psychiatrist, maybe there's a nutritionist on staff. In our case, if you walked into a Cedar psychiatry clinic, you'd have those, the spectrum of services that people are familiar with that I just described. And you'd also have a spectrum of alternative neuropsychiatric modalities. Things like ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, that of course a lot of people are talking about ketamine as the first legal psychedelic. Spravato, which is a prescription form of ketamine. TMS would be another example, transcranial magnetic stimulation. And the compounds like MDMA and psilocybin that people are talking about, when legalized, we fully expect to bring them online. So this is what I mean by spectrum of alternative health, mental health modalities that we are already offering in our clinics and elsewhere.
Okay. And so like, so so the ketamine, like what is the, when somebody goes to the clinic, what are they there for? Like, and how does the ketamine help them?
So typically, in terms of an intake, understand that we're absolutely medical in how we approach our clients. So the first process is a screening process where one of our psychiatrists or leading therapists will attend to the client and essentially do both a historical analysis and a status check to figure out what the best course of action for them. And I wanted to make that really clear because ketamine is not the right approach for everybody. And although we're spending a lot of time talking about it, and Cedar is, of course, a specialist in the field, we've done over 4,000 ketamine-assisted psychotherapy treatments, just to give you an idea, and over 2,000 Spravato treatments, which is the prescription form of ketamine. So we have deep expertise, but unless we feel it's appropriate for that client, we won't necessarily put them in it. So back to how we do approach that client is that spectrum of alternative modalities are available to them, and we will try the best match the best modality with that person's condition.
Okay, so the focus really is going to be is using psychedelics as therapies. Right now you have the ketamine, and then you want to get into the the psilocybin and the MDMA. That's going to be once at some point. It looks like it's going to happen shortly. Like it's okay. So and you also have a contract research business.
Correct.
Okay, and that's for what? That's for the psychedelic medicines, like what? And
that's right. That it manages the clinical trials that many people are hearing about. And by the way, I want to go back to, you're absolutely right to point out, Jack, that when people talk about the legalization of MDMA, it is expected fairly soon. 2023 is the hope. And when they talk about the legalization of psilocybin, again, I'm defining legalization as available as a prescription in the United States. So this is really soon. I concur with you. And for a company like us, the goal is to be one of the top 5 clinics companies in the psychedelic space. And the way we're going about doing that is by expanding that base very quickly. We partnered our way into the business. So instead of starting clinics from zero, we partnered our way in. We acquired those 4 clinics. Those clinics have this very significant and widely known expertise through our chief medical officer, Dr. Reed Robison. He is one of the coordinating investigators for the MDMA clinical trial in phase 3 currently, led by MAPS. So he's very widely known for his expertise in psychedelic medicine. And it's well understood in our industry that for lots of people, the many people that will want to access these treatments, we're going to need thousands of clinics. Okay, to be clear, that's very well understood.
So that is okay. So that's a key takeaway. So there's going to be a demand for thousands of these clinics. Okay, so from what I understand, okay, so the legalization, all this stuff is going to happen. The next, let's call it 18 to 24 months. But the idea is you want to be there again. To use the hockey metaphor, you want to be where the puck is heading. You're not going to be chasing after the puck 2 years from now. You want to build it now so that when the wave comes in, that's where the value is created.
That's exactly right. We've been building it for the last 2 years, in fact. So objectively, when we look at our peer group and we compare what we've built and how we continue to build on this platform, the big differentiator is in fact that we're treating people now. So we've also got major investments in the Netherlands, where if appropriate, one of our medical team can refer an appropriate client to that legal psilocybin experience today in the Netherlands before it's available stateside. So we've effectively built our infrastructure so that we can treat people today, and we've been doing that. And it's important that your listeners understand that we are not simply building for the future. We are revenue generating, cash flowing. In fact, we do make millions of dollars a year helping many thousands, as I said, with clients. And the advent of MDMA and psilocybin as prescription drugs, what I'll make the clear distinction for the audience is that these are not self-administered drugs. The prescription will require you to go somewhere and have this experience. And currently the protocols require for 2 therapists, okay, 2, not just 1, 2 highly trained therapists. So in addition to the thousands of clinics, which I'm sure your listeners can now understand why, if these are supervised treatments, and if a trip takes anywhere from 4 to 8 hours and requires 2 therapists, then the infrastructure to go along with that really requires thousands of clinics to serve the hundreds of thousands or millions of people that want these opportunities.
Interesting. Okay, so we got an audience comment, which I think kind of sums up the idea. Is it's kind of like a picks and shovels business in the psychedelic industry. So it's like, you're basically you're making money now, and as new, as legalization comes in, there's new compounds, etc. Psychedelic stuff, you're there ready to
yeah, I'm very comfortable with that analogy, because the other thing I'll add to that, and it's a good bit of insight, is that we're also we're drug agnostic. Okay, we're agnostic in every sense, which means that we want to work with as many people as possible. So if psilocybin via a for-profit company, which is the case, and reaches the end of its clinical trial before the not-for-profit company, we'll be open to working with one or both. If drug developers want to start working on exotic compounds, more exotic compounds than the classics, things like DMT, things like 5-MeO, etc., we're very open and in fact engaged on working with those people. So it allows us the opportunity to essentially participate in the clinical phase trial process that's required to make these drugs legal. And because we participate in the clinical trials, we get the experience, we get our therapists trained. So the moment they come online, our expectation is that if we, to the general public in the United States and worldwide in terms of our expansion, if we were trusted to participate and lead the clinical trials for MDMA, we expect we'll be trusted to help people facilitate that experience for themselves.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Okay, so first let me ask you this. So you have 4 clinics now. How big is the market opportunity in this space, like for these clinics for psychedelic therapies? Like, how big is it right now? What's the size of the market right now? Let's say, I don't know, in North America, and where do you think it's going to be in, let's call it 2-3 years from now?
I can't put a number, unfortunately. I'd like to know as well what that market size data point is specifically for psychedelic therapy clinics, and that's hard to do because the psychedelic therapy clinics of the future are being built by people like us right now, right? They exist in these hybrid forms where some of the drugs aren't legal yet, and essentially you're putting in the pieces, as we spoke about before. But I'll speak about the market size in terms of outpatient mental health clinics, which is an industry we've gotten to know very well because, of course, we made acquisitions. And it's a very fragmented market, and it's in the hundreds of billions in terms of market size. And I suppose the most compelling part of this market, the reason I founded the business, the reason I've devoted my life to it for the last years and will continue to, is that what we all know without needing to be medical doctors is that the current standard of care is not working very well. So everybody knows someone that is touched by mental health, and very few people have access to alternatives. So that is, if they're not responding or if they're not well served by the standard of care, and I think we all know people like this, they really don't have anywhere to go. So I can tell you the market for people who are out looking for those alternatives, we hear them all the time. Some of them come and travel to our clinics in Utah because we are so specialized, and we've been doing it since 2016. But that's the demand curve that we're focused on, and we're doing our best to satisfy that demand in the form of opening new clinics and new clinical research sites, which you'll see from us. You'll see some news on that in the coming weeks and months.
Okay. Okay. So we got a question. I guess one of the questions is, I think maybe the question really is like, what are you doing different than other psychiatric clinics? Like, what is and I guess maybe the question is, can can existing clinics get into this space? Like how are you gonna what's gonna differentiate you?
I think what we're doing and what differentiates already and will continue to is that we're treating people. So a typical outpatient mental health clinic will not adopt the alternative neuropsychiatric modalities that I've described. So just to make that really clear, when you talk about things like ketamine-assisted psychotherapy or TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, or Spravato, it's a very specialized area of care. In some cases, Spravato is only a few years old since it was approved, and Reed Robison, our CMO, led the clinical trials in Utah for Spravato, which is a drug that was developed by Janssen, and is now effectively a key opinion leader where every week or month he's on the line sharing his experiences. So just to make it clear to everyone, that these modalities, some of them are very much novel, and there aren't that many people that have a lot of experience with them. So it's about focusing on those modalities, pairing them with some of the traditional things like cognitive behavioral therapy. And so the answer to your question is yes, that opportunity is available to many practitioners. But what you'll find is that really only the special, there's only certain ones that have adopted it very early. And because they've been practicing like Dr. Robison for the past 5 years, they're that much better positioned to help us scale now. So those are the people we want to work with. And in fact, we have a pretty long list of partnerships, like-minded psychiatrists who are operating clinics. And if any of them are listening, I'd welcome them to reach out to me, because these are the kind of people we're working with, where they can adopt some of our expertise and we can work with them and creating these new psychedelic clinics of the future. So we're having a lot of success with that model now, Jack. Again, this isn't about the future. It's about opening these clinics and seeing clients now.
Okay. So you got four clinics. So we get a question here. I guess Tuan is asking, what is the average revenue per patient?
It's a very tough data point because we provide a spectrum of services. So if that patient is a ketamine patient versus a TMS patient, or maybe some combination of CBT thereof, unlike a widget company, it's a very curated service for each client. So there might be a mean, but it's not very relevant. We really want to match the right treatments to the clients. That's the goal.
Okay. So what kind of revenues, what are you generating the revenues like per clinic right now?
Sure. So the run rate of a clinic is roughly $1 million annualized, and all of our clinics are all open in the near the Salt Lake area in Utah. So our first order of business will be expanding within Utah, but also outside of Utah. But that metric is a good one insofar as if we were to start, and we will be, for example, an organic clinic in Utah, we invest about $200,000 to get that clinic open, and that clinic, in our experience, reaches a run rate of $1 million annualized revenue in that first year. So that's what a new clinic looks like for us. We also have hybrid clinic retreats, which is a new model that we're working on, which to our knowledge is unprecedented. And in short, that's taking our clinical expertise that I talked about in Salt Lake and merging it with a retreat model that we've become very experienced at through our investments and some other collaborators we have. And you're able to take effectively a hybrid clinic retreat model. Instead of being in Salt Lake City, it could be in a place like Park City, Utah, if some people are familiar with that area, where it's essentially world-class nature destination and world-class destination for that. And in our industry, we call that change in physical location, partly set and setting. And the set and setting can have a very, very big impact on how efficacious the outcomes are for clients. So if you can imagine, if someone has a mental health condition, and we do a lot of work with them in the clinic in Salt Lake, in some cases with ketamine, as an example, there's essentially a limit you can get to of how much work the therapist can do in that set and setting. And if now they're able to provide that experience in Park City with the nature, which again, the data has proven in psychedelic medicine that setting, that nature setting, can have a very positive impact, then again, to point out, it's something we can provide today, not in the future at some point, but we can take our expertise on the clinic side and the retreat side, and there's another model of clinics you'll see. So that would operate probably a little bigger in terms of scale than a traditional clinic. And an average clinic now somewhere around 4,000 square feet is what a clinic would look like, operating at a run rate of about $1 million a year.
Okay. And what about are you going to expand, like when you talk about retreats? I know like some places are, they're doing like these retreats for psychedelic medicines or in areas where it's legal. I don't know, outside of the U.S. They do like ayahuasca, all that. Are you going to get into that market?
Well, we're into it in the sense that our leading practitioners, I've mentioned Reed Robison, and there's other research scientists that work with us. They've published in medical journals because they have been working with these compounds for years in a medical and research context. So our approach is that we only operate in jurisdictions where a certain compound is legal, and we only operate at a standard of care that is equivalent to what we offer in the United States now. So the short answer is yes, we are and will continue to be involved in retreat work. What that looks like is either we were referring someone to an entity that we have an affiliation with, like exists in the Netherlands today, or we're setting up a retreat with our people, our practitioners, again, that are known thought leaders already in psychedelic medicine. They've been working with these groups for many years, and they essentially are replicating their protocols and their models for helping people in retreats that we'll set up in those legal jurisdictions. So imagine a much more institutional grade, medical, totally medical version of a retreat where that quality of standard of care is similar to what you would see in the United States.
Okay. And so I guess the question is how far and how fast can this scale? I mean, can this be, $100 million revenue business, $1 billion, and how fast, how long would it take to get there? And I think I'm only asking about just the clinic side, not the contract research, or if you want to talk about both.
Sure. I think it's relevant to talk about both in terms of our growth prospects, because we think that the clinical research business can be massive. But I'll speak to the clinics first. I think when you talk in orders of 100 million or $1 billion order of magnitude, I do think that's reasonable, and that's based on really the demand curve. So we're seeing the demand for these treatments. I think everyone can agree that COVID has exacerbated that pull effect, I call it, where people are looking for alternatives in mental health. So this isn't a situation where we need to convince people that our wares are good and they otherwise aren't disposed to try. People are highly predisposed now to seeking out alternative mental health treatments to improve or increase their quality of life. So if you look at that as a market size, I could argue me and everyone I know is in that market too. And I think the stigma is being removed. So when you remove the stigma, that market size is going to get a hell of a lot bigger on that basis as people feel more and more comfortable. And that's essentially the vein in which we're building these clinics. We want to make it easy for people and comfortable for people, and maybe most importantly, safe. Okay, the key word is safe, because Jack, I don't know what your background is or some of your listeners. People come at this from different cultural vantage points. They know more and less about these experiences like psilocybin and MDMA. But for a very large group of people, it's safety that is the bottom line. And they will not take the risk. And I can appreciate that. They won't take the risk unless that regulatory infrastructure is there to guarantee the safety and efficacy of their experience. And that's what we're building. That by the time clients come to see us in a world in 2023, which hopefully MDMA is available to PTSD sufferers first, that they will have no doubt whatsoever, and that we provide that very well understood standard of care that can then be replicated, as I said, over the thousands of clinics that are going to be needed to treat millions of people. So it's really for us a very clear path where we got our work cut out for us. We're not guessing at how to do this. It's about taking the platform that treated 20,000 clients last year, or 20,000 client visits, excuse me, and scaling that in exponential terms.
Okay, so we got a question, I think, about the contract research side of the business. How, I guess the question is, how much are you generating now, and how big do you expect that to be in the future?
I expect it to be a very big part of Novamind's top line and bottom line in the future. So today it's it's less than 20% of our revenue base. How about that? Okay, without getting specific, we haven't disclosed financials for 2020, somewhat limited, but it's less than 20%. The reason for that is that in the about 8 trials that we have ongoing right now at Cedar Clinical Research, most of those are at a very early stage, and they're limited to the one site because that is what we've been offering pharmaceutical clients. Now, to give everybody a bit of a window into what that work looks like today, we have trials that include Tourette syndrome for large pharmaceutical company, borderline personality disorder. These are drugs being developed to treat these disorders. Of course, I mentioned the work we're doing with MAPS and MDMA. We have work with the Ketamine Research Foundation focused on therapies for end-of-life distress. So it's a spectrum of research that's going on. The more clinical trials that we are contracted to do, the more that revenue profile will grow. So what I'll tell you and your viewers today is that when you start seeing news from us as far as new clinical trials that we have in the pipeline and that we'll be announcing, I think the clients, that is our client, the drug developer that you will see us partnering, will give everybody a very clear understanding of how we're positioned in the sector. And we expect to do these clinical trials with the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, like I said, and some of the newest that are very niche focused on psychedelic medicine. We want to work with all of them. So that business can grow very, very quickly because our capital now that we raised is being used to expand the clinical research sites. And in some cases, some of the clinics double as clinical research sites where appropriate. So we want to get as many of those clinical research sites available as possible because the drug developers find that more attractive. And the margins for that clinical trial business. So for example, if a large pharmaceutical company awards you with a trial and that trial consists of multiple sites over, let's say, a year time frame, which would require us to recruit multiple candidates, execute those trials, collect the data, etc., that can be $1 million worth of business, one trial over a year, and the margins are very high. The margins are significantly higher than the outpatient mental health business. So that's why the CRO business becomes very, very attractive to us. We've brought in, I should say, some very specialized groups to help us build that business. Now, we've recently hired a COO, which I'm very proud of, and I'll mention. His name is Pierre Boumansour, and we've got a news release out just a couple of days ago on this. Pierre was formerly the COO of Life Labs. Life Labs is one of Canada's largest medical service companies, and it did $1 billion in revenue in Pierre's time when he left in 2019. So this was not long ago. This is the scope of what we're trying to build. We are trying to build, as you said, you can call it picks and shovels, you can call it infrastructure. We are going to build at scale the places where people are going to access these treatments, and as well the places where the drug developers are going to develop the drugs. And I'll just add, in terms of the people we brought in along with Pierre, he understands the CRO space well, but there's others we've brought in, and they too believe, and I think your audience can validate for themselves. If you look at all the news flow around how much capital is flowing to drug development, well, where do you think that drug development gets done? If you really are going to get to phase 3, you need thousands of sites across the world. Imagine that, thousands of clinical trial sites like ours across the world. So that's the role we're going to play, whether it's clinics or clinical research sites. You can't do without the picks and shovels, as you know, in any business. And, frankly, I believe that we're going to be a top 5 player when it's all said and done. That's what we're striving to be. We don't operate from a position of scarcity. So in fact, I would like to see some of my peers succeed. Maybe they'll have a particular focus. Maybe they'll have a geographic focus. But in a world where again, thousands of clinics and clinical research sites will exist to both access and advance psychedelic medicine, I think we're going to be a top player in there. And that's why I'm comfortable talking about hundreds of millions in revenue, because that will be the outcome if we reach our goals.
Okay, so that's real. Okay, so I mean that's kind of the big upside. The contract research side is, that's essentially $1 billion opportunity. Is kind of the bottom line.
The bottom line for me is that Novamind is that opportunity, and I guess, Jack, I'd also say truly you almost get some diversification, right?
The contract research side is going to be that's where you see the big money, that basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll come from both, and I think that essentially investors are going to benefit from both lines of business. So there's a symbiotic relationship there. Again, if we're involved in a clinical trial for MDMA that's expected to be legal in 2023, I think there's a good chance that the clients are going to trust us as the place to access their own MDMA experience. So that's why both of those things work in tandem. And every time you see us in a trial, you should expect that there's other clients and people out there seeing the same thing and trying to access one of our clinics, hopefully, which will be expanding geographically as far and wide as we can.
Okay. Yaron, we're running a little bit short of time. We're going to have you back. I think we're going to have you back next to do the full presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity to get very good questions now. I kind of want to, ask a few of my own, and can maybe get to the audience. But tell us, can you tell the audience about like your background and some of the other key players on the team? Like, how did you get involved in space?
Happy to. I've been a venture capital investor and operator for about 20 years now. What that means is that I've been investing in early stage companies, and in most cases, taking either a lead executive role as a CEO or CFO or on the board and working with those companies. So I'm very active in the businesses I build. And I co-founded Novamind, I mentioned earlier, it was about 2 years ago. And my co-founders are Sruli Weinreb and Jesse Kaplan, both based in Toronto, and they run a firm called Plaza Capital. We've had a lot of success together, the three of us as partners, having invested and built businesses in a range of sectors: cannabis, renewable energy, technology, mining, among others. So while I'm not a medical scientist and I'm not a domain expert in psychedelic medicine, my expertise is in building venture companies. And in this case, like in many other cases, we partnered. Again, I've mentioned Dr. Reed Robison and some other people. So our role specifically, myself as CEO and Jesse and Sruli, who are still on the board, it's about building these businesses, putting teams together, putting the risk capital that's required early, and essentially creating the best and strongest platform possible so that we can then bring in the people with their domain expertise to build out clinics, to build out clinical research sites, to develop therapeutic protocols that can then be disseminated widely. So our focus is on financing the company, making sure it's well capitalized. We have a large network and a large following of people who have been involved in our other businesses. So we've raised all the capital for this company ourselves, and we've only listed for a couple of weeks. So for the most part, we've been under the radar, and until we went public, we didn't want to do too much talking. But now we're ready, and I'd encourage your viewers to take a look at our deck, take a look at our website. My co-founders are listed there as well, and you can look at our backgrounds and our track record for sure.
We're gonna have next week. We'll have you back. We'll do the whole full presentation, and I hope we're gonna have like an hour basically where we can answer a lot of questions, all that. Yaron, I want to ask you in terms of you kind of talked a little bit broadly in terms of scaling else. What's your vision for Novamind? Let's call it long term. I know for a lot of investors, long term is like 3 days, but let's say 3 years out. So 2-3 years out, because really this is the psychic play. We're really like in the, I don't even know if it's the first inning yet. I mean, it's it's still a very early stage. It's probably going to, but I think this is the year that's kind of going mainstream a little bit. But it's probably next year. It's going to be a 2-3 year play. So what is Novamind going to look like? What kind of revenues do you see potentially generating 2-3 years out?
It's hard to predict in any linear kind of way, because I really do think the growth is exponential. So we haven't, for example, on our base of clinics, the 4 clinics we've mentioned, without talking about the new clinics and the incremental revenue that'll be added onto that. On the existing base, we've doubled the amount of clients, as I mentioned, right? So that business in terms of client visits doubled year over year. If you extrapolate that over a much larger network of clinics and clinical research sites, And if you add in 2023 as an example, which it's really not long away, a pretty significant and new, think of it almost in finance terms, people talk about a new asset class like Bitcoin, right? It didn't exist before and the flood of interest went in. Well, there will be a new mental health modality available to the market, one that has a profound impact, one that seems to have a curative effect based on the data we're seeing. It's unprecedented is what I'm getting at. So I don't want you or any of your viewers taking my word for it that, my crystal ball tells me that demand's going to be this much and revenue will be that much. But I'll tell you, we're working like hell to be a top 5 player so that those clinics are there, the therapists are trained, and when people go, and we expect a huge rush towards a lot of these not self-administered experiences. Let's remember. So in the order of hundreds of thousands of millions of people that want to have these experiences, that's why I think revenues in the tens and hundreds of millions is absolutely the stated goal. And if we're operating at a scale of 20 plus clinics, I think you'll see very quickly double digit, tens of millions of revenue.
Okay. So let's, I guess one of the questions people are, I think a couple of people ask, are your patients, just to be clear, are you only in Utah? Are you expanding out of Utah? I mean, how patients are coming, from out of state? Like, you have a national kind of goal, right? Or global, maybe.
Absolutely. I'd say global. Absolutely.
We're starting to have 4 clinics there, but that's not the end. That's not the end of the story.
That's right. It's the beginning of the story. And to be really specific, the reason we're in Utah is because one of the luminaries in psychedelic medicine, Dr. Reed Robison, who's now our CMO, decided to establish his clinic. So he is both a clinician and a research scientist. His business has started there, and that's the reason we're there. Getting that expertise was ultra important to us. Again, we built this business designed on the thesis that we wanted to treat people today with the best available alternatives. Whether they were doing that on the moon or doing it in Utah, I was going to find those people and partner with them. We've done that. Now we take that knowledge and we disseminate absolutely in the US. You can expect in the next couple months a new jurisdiction to be announced. And then globally, again, we already have investments in the Netherlands. So we've made moves to expand globally already.
Okay. Yaron, what kind of milestones do you have coming up over the next couple of months? Let's just say the next, again, our audience, very short attention spans. They want instant gratification. What do you have in the next, let's just say 8 to 10 weeks? What kind of milestones that investors can look forward to?
So things I've talked about, clinics opening, number one. You're going to see clinic expansion in weeks and months. You're going to see clinical research site expansion in weeks and months, and you're going to see news specific in that timeline to new clinical trials that we're working on. Again, we have a pipeline of clinical trials, so of course we have to get the approvals necessary, but we're working on these things in real time, so as soon as they're ready, we're happy to announce them and of course share that information. So clinics are opening, clinical research sites and clinical trials are being added. And the third one, I think it'll have, in fact, the biggest impact on our business is you'll see more people being added. So I mentioned, of course, Pierre, who used to run as COO, a $1 billion medical services company. And you're going to see more additions. I mentioned my expertise is in building venture companies. I've had a lot of success at that with my partners, but I'm not a psychiatrist, obviously, and I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not a builder of CROs. So there's people who have done that for decades. They have the expertise to do that, and we're working with those people. And I think you'll see more announcements of some high-profile people joining our team.
So Yaron, are you saying that basically at some point you're going to replace yourself? Like maybe you go in the chairman role, you bring in a CEO that had, I don't know, something in the medical space or something which is,
I didn't say that, to be clear. I didn't say that. Although really, I am very comfortable with what my domain expertise is and isn't. So right now, it's focused, in fact, on finding those people who are going to help us grow within each of those verticals that I mentioned, whether it's clinical research or the clinics themselves. So I'm really focused on making sure that putting those people together, creating the structure for the organization and the strategies that we execute, and making sure that we have the capital to execute on our business plan, which so far, investors have shown a lot of trust in us. We've raised all that money from our networks. Again, we've only been public a few weeks. So the expectation is that we're there to supercharge our business plan with capital. And that's why we went public.
Okay.
And that's what I do.
Okay. Your last question, which we ask every CEO repeatedly almost. But so in your opinion, what are the top 3 reasons why investors should consider Novamind right now?
The first, without a doubt, is that we're treating people. And I keep mentioning it because I think investors, stakeholders, wherever they are, need to differentiate. Our business does not rely on something to be delivered in the future. Our business will expand by leaps and bounds when regulatory and policy changes take effect, so that new drugs are available. But it's not required for us, and so you'll see that growth during and after the advent of those drugs being made legal. The second thing is the clinical research side. I think that the more people we work with and the more news and the more information we share, people will understand the connection that I'm trying to point out, that success in working on the clinical trials should and will likely translate into success in treating people in clinics. It's a direct connection there, and if we succeed at one, we should succeed at the other. The third and final thing I haven't talked a lot about, maybe we'll leave it for another time, but within Cedar Clinical Research, our CRO, we're doing investigator-led research, which means self-funded research. When we have an opportunity to study something, we don't have to go find a CRO and pay someone to design a trial for us to recruit patients and to report on that data. So we, in fact, are already doing this ourselves. This is research that we've funded, where we are designing trials using specific compounds and designing our own therapeutic protocols. We're bringing people into the lab and reporting on that data, and we've had some great success. So that's something you'll hear about. We're going to develop more protocols that are focused on very specific indications. I'll stop there.
Okay, excellent. Actually, one last question, which is, I think, kind of, I should have asked you is, I mean, you just started trading in Canada, really. When are you going to be on the OTC? Because most of our audience really is US. So and that's probably one of the catalysts for the next catalyst for the stock is the US buyers.
Yeah, I think it'll be a big catalyst for the stock. We've done a lot of meetings, and there's a lot of interest in the US and people that are waiting to buy our stock, some that are just doing it on the Canadian market now. So we expect to be listed on the OTC QB. I'd say we're probably 4 to 6 weeks away based on the update I got yesterday. So we're very diligently pursuing that. And I'd encourage your viewers anywhere to have a look at us on the CSE, as I've spoken to a lot of American clients that have been able to buy it on the Canadian exchange.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, the opportunity now is to,
I wouldn't be waiting for the OTC QX listing. Now. That's right.
Perfect. Okay, Yaron, thank you, and I'll see. We'll see you next week for the full presentation, and hopefully we're going to have opportunity to answer all the questions, because we've got probably 15 questions we didn't get a chance to get to. So we'll see you next week.
I'll look forward to it. That was fun. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, guys. Okay, let's get ready. Let's get ready for our next presenter. Let's get things set up here. Okay, stand by. We're gonna get this. We're gonna get this up over here. Let's see. Shafin.
How's it going?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay, let me just get things set up over here. Let me find the banner here. We got a lot of people waiting for you today. We got a big full house here.
Excited to speak to everybody.
Let's see here. Where is the banner? Hang on a second. Okay. Okay, let me just make sure we have. Okay, everything's there. All right. Okay, Shafin, let me get. Okay, so we're going to be doing the slides today. We're going to be showing the slides. I want to make sure we have. I think you have one of your team members who's going to be adding this. So I'm going to have Abby, if you could get the slides on, do the screen share. If she can do, Abby, if we can have the slides ready. Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay, add to the stream. Let's and if we just go to full. Okay, perfect. And let's go to the first slide. Is there? Can we get the first slide on the screen? Let's see. Abby, are you there? What's okay? So let's if we can get the slot. Can we go to the first slide? Okay, here we go. Okay, so perfect. Okay, all right.
Sorry about that.
No worries. It's a normal. Well, listen, I'm glad our internet is working. Yesterday it wasn't. So okay, let's make sure we have everything ready to go when we start. Okay, perfect. So, okay. All right. Okay, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's Discovery Day live stream. For those of you just joining now, again, welcome to the Discovery Day live stream for January 27th. I'm very excited to bring you a new company, Victory Square Technologies, VST on the CSE, VSQTF over the counter, and Shafin Tejani, the CEO of the company. And so Shafin is actually good. I think what we're going to do differently is usually I just start off with a Q&A when we introduce you to a company, but I want to have Shafin show you the full slides, because this company has multiple facets, and I think it's important for really to understand it. And we're actually going to have Shafin come back multiple times, so like maybe once a week for the next couple of weeks, because there's so many facets to this. It's kind of like he's got to show like every facet, sort of like it's like polishing. We're going to show a new facet, and it comes into focus, and it's incredible. So again, those of you who are new, our goal is to bring you those stocks which have 10x to 100x upside. So these are companies going after multi-billion-dollar opportunities. These companies have multiple catalysts now in place to ignite that shareholder value, and really they're at that threshold of explosive growth. And I think if you watched today's presentation, I think you're going to be very that Victory Square really meets those three criteria. So again, watch the presentation, ask Shafin your questions, and then decide for yourself if a VST, Victory Square, is going to be our next 10x to 100x winner. So Shafin, with that said, I'm going to disappear and I'll come back for the Q&A. Okay, so let's get this over here. And Shafin.
Well, first off, thanks for having me, and I appreciate all the listeners kind of tuning in to learn about Victory Square. We have so much heat that we could probably be, tuning in every day to talk about something we're working on with you. But I'll kick off, and just before we kind of go through the slides, I'll just give the viewers kind of a bit of a background. So I started in the tech space, in the online dating space in the mid-90s. I saw how the internet was going to disrupt the way we access information, the way we worked, played, and communicate. We were very good at driving traffic to our sites. During the first dot-com boom, very few internet companies were actually making money. In the online dating space, we actually were generating a lot of positive cash flow. And what we decided to do was to buy, build, and invest in technology companies that could either solve a pain point in our existing business, or that we could drive users from one site to another. This is the core of, this is called the venture build model, which is the core of VST's business model today. Since the mid-90s, we've successfully launched over 40 companies in over 20 countries around the world, generating over $1 billion of market value. So there's over two decades of success getting in early in early internet, mobile, and today, and all the disruptive technologies of today. I think the big key there is being able to get extraordinary performance because we are seeing things that other people don't see in advance, and that's been one of the strategic advantages of VST. There's that Wayne Gretzky quote: "Don't go to where the puck is, but go to where you think the puck is going to be," and that's kind of something that's been synonymous with our portfolio companies and our investments. Victory Square Technologies was created in 2017. The mission was to democratize access to the next best tech companies around the world. So to give shareholders ground floor access, to the next tech giants before their tech giants. Everyone always says, "I wish I could have invested in Amazon, Google, Facebook, Netflix early on," where we're trying to find those next companies within our portfolio. Our portfolio is vast. We've got 20 plus companies working on subject matters such as blockchain, AR, VR, digital health, cloud computing, cybersecurity, and more. We're publicly traded. We're listed in Canada on the CSE, in Europe on the Frankfurt, and on the OTCQX in the US. So, there's a quote by a famous science fiction author, William Gibson, and he says, the founders who live in the future have the best chance of winning big. Over the next decade, we're going to see disruption across all sectors, across all geographies. I think COVID has accelerated, a lot of these advancements. In the past, we've seen what disruptive tech and innovation has done, from steam to electricity and telephone to what we've seen in the last 20 years with the advent of personalized computers, the internet, and everything that we see kind of on a go-forward basis. They've changed the way we work, play, and communicate. Right now is a very interesting time because I think over the next decade, we're going to see even more advancement, disruption, and acceleration. There are 5 platforms converging at the same time. Each platform itself is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, and these platforms are around AI, DNA sequencing, blockchain, robotics, energy storage. And what these platforms do is they open up tremendous opportunity. An example, of that, when you look at energy storage, if you think about smart cars, smartphones, smart TVs, robots, all these new innovations and technologies are closer than we think, given the breakthroughs in battery technology. So each of these multi-trillion-dollar platforms are going to open up a tremendous number of opportunities. And this is kind of what we're seeing, and where our eyes at VST have been on for these next gen companies. This next slide, might be a bit dramatic, but it's a good point to kind of look at, the last 20 years. No one would have expected Sears or Blockbuster, or Kodak or Yellow Pages. These are companies that had such massive market share, 20 plus years ago. And I think the bet that a new upstart like an Amazon or Google or Facebook or Netflix, for that matter, could disrupt these companies would have been far-fetched, but it's happened. And we see with with this disruptive technology over the next decade, we think that opportunity is coming again. And this next new breed of companies that will be seeded around the world, leveraging these new platforms and technology to reimagine every industry as we know it, are going to be founded. And this is where there's tremendous opportunity, for shareholders, investors to bet on the next, big things. Ultimately, people will always want to, will need to eat, work, play, and connect. What's changing is how they do that and how companies deliver those to customers. And these new breed of companies are being able to rethink the customer experience, especially more so with this current pandemic, because they're more agile than some of these larger companies that are too big to move. These new breed of companies are able to, reset the system, see what's not working, and be able to envision what may work, and to be able to solve pain points that we're having today, on a go forward basis. These are all the types of factors and facets of the type of characters and values that we look for in our portfolio company. Now, when it comes to investment criteria, there's the standard set, disruptive tech, market opportunity, product traction. You hear all these buzzwords, and those are all key in everything we look for. But there are a couple of other X factors. When you're investing in an early entrepreneur or in a company that's more in its startup stage, you're really betting on the entrepreneur and his or her team. Entrepreneurship and startups have been glamorized. It's not a hockey stick curve up. It's more of a roller coaster. So at these stages, one of the biggest keys is the management's ability to improvise, adapt, and overcome, to almost tame the roller coaster. So our investment criteria, there's the standard set of things that we look at, but we feel like we're a very good judge of character and good at spotting undiscovered talent. A lot of your viewers may be familiar with this. One real life example is Fans Unite. You've had Darius Gami and Scott Burton on. Those guys were rock stars and leaders and thought leaders in esports and in the sports betting space. We just happen to be able to use our process to identify undiscovered talent. And I think your viewers have seen how amazing of a job that company, that board, that management team has done to be leaders in their respective space. Our investment process, I think, is kind of our secret sauce. When we say we find needles in a haystack, well, how? Well, our solution was to build a magnet, and this magnet is our venture build model, which kind of comes back from what I talked about earlier, from the online dating space. This venture build model. So before we make an investment, we only want to go into areas where we understand there's a big market opportunity and we have some competitive advantages. So what we do first is, before we look at any investment, we identify a pain point in a market. We figure out what are the core competencies we have, what are the pain points we see in our existing ecosystem of businesses, so that when we go and invest in a company, we know that at a minimum, we can be the first customer. Two, we'll also go and find a large customer in a large addressable market before going and finding a company that we want to invest in. In a lot of cases, startups build product without a customer, and by the time they go and sell it to the customer, they realize that it's not what the customer exactly wants. So we want to start off by ensuring that whatever we're investing in and whatever we're building, there's a customer immediately, so that business can generate cash flow. Once we identify the pain point or have a client that has a major pain point, is we go in and search the world for some of the top minds and startups working on this. Over the last 2 decades, we've established relationships with 80 accelerators around the world. So from North America, South America, the Middle East, India, Europe, tech is borderless. Greatness is coming from everywhere. So because of those 2 decades of building and businesses around the world, we've established some really, really good funnels into accelerators in all of those markets to have vetted agents kind of evaluate companies for us. Once we've found that company, we then bring that company into our own ecosystem and validate their technology, or we bring it into a large customer to validate their tech, so that they immediately have a big customer in a market, and then they're able to commercialize that service. That process takes about 12 to 36 months. The sweet part of that is around the 36-month mark, when it is commercializing. Then from a Victory Square perspective, we have the option of spinning that asset out. And this is where it unlocks value for VST and VST shareholders. Once that company has been spun out, it can either we can do a share dividend, where VST would dividend out shares in that new company to our shareholders. Two, we can sell a position, part of our position in those companies. Now, we believe long term in those businesses, but we can dilute some of our ownership stake and pay out a cash dividend to VST shareholders, or we can reinvest that and continue to compound the growth that we've been seeing in our business. Right now, again, we've mentioned Fans Unite, which is a lot of your viewers are familiar with, as the first example of the company that had been spun out and the success of that. FansUnite came into the ecosystem at a market valuation of around 2 million Canadian dollars a couple of years ago, and now it's publicly traded. It's on a tear, well capitalized, great leadership, with a market cap around 150, 160 million dollars. So that's an example of a product that's kind of gone through that cycle. And there's 22 other outstanding companies that are ready to kind of follow suit. When you look at the sectors that we focus on, there are three main sectors. One of which we've spent a tremendous amount of time in, another which has been a focus for the last 18 months, and then a third which is kind of coming around. So the first is around next generation internet. So these next generation internet technologies would be considered AI, deep learning, big data, cloud computing, digital media, IoT, cybersecurity, blockchain. Next gen internet would fall under those categories. And we've got a number of portfolio companies in that space, all focused on changing the way the world manages information, analyzes data, purchases, consumes goods, and communicates across the globe. Two examples of that that we're super excited about are Immersive and Game On. So Immersive is a company in the virtual and augmented reality space. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of VST. They're disrupting a market that's going to be worth over $35 billion over the next 3 years. This is a team that's in the right space, but they've also built product for Fortune 500 companies like Intel, eBay, Allegiant Airlines, the FDA, and on and on and on. So again, not only are they in a really disruptive space with a big addressable market, but they've built product for Fortune 500 companies. So they've got the experience, and their team is made up of rock stars. I think that team now has the resources and tools to be able to successfully execute and bring us another winner in that category. We most recently announced an update. They just released a product called Uncontained, which is the world's first COVID-safe location-based entertainment VR division. So if viewers haven't checked it out, check out our latest news release. There's an amazing video on what they've built, which we're super excited about. Immersive is actually going to be spun out in March or April of this year. So it's going to unlock tremendous value for VST. Another example of our portfolio company is Game On. So Game On was a recent acquisition. The company came out of Techstars New York. It's led by a really bright CEO in the tech space named Matt Bailey, who's originally from Australia. And they built technology that is making the TV viewing or streaming viewing experience more social. So they've partnered up with Comcast and NBC Universal. They've got great distribution, great pilot projects. They're cash flow positive or cash flowing right now, but going to be reinvesting in their business. And they'll be spun out end of February, beginning of March. So again, those two companies, kind of are our next generation internet examples of our next generation internet companies investments, and they're going to be creating a lot of value for VST. The other sector, which is we've spent the last, I would say, 18 months on, is all around the digital health space. So we've seen rapid innovation around DNA sequencing, gene editing, CRISPR therapeutics, agricultural biological molecular diagnostics disruptions in those spaces. All of those spaces improve the quality of life. They help increase drug discovery, all about restructuring healthcare, and all quality of life type businesses. Over the last 18 months, we've seen a tremendous amount of momentum in that space under one of our portfolio companies, Victory Square Digital. So we've got I think over 10,000 health professionals across the U.S. In over 50 states, with a pharmacy 503 license. Those two items are going to be pillars of a telehealth platform that we'll be launching shortly in the discrete care space. So treating embarrassing cases over a telehealth platform that's proprietary. Two, telehealth service for the hospitality space, which we've had some very good inroads in that space to be able to launch that product. And then we've recently made an acquisition in a company called Hydrate. So Hydrate is on-demand and on-site mobile wellness. What it's allowed us to do was increase our team, but more importantly, our the number of services under Victory Square Digital Health. So Hydrate was performing at-home lab testing, IV drip, COVID-19 testing, Botox, and a lot of other spa specialty services. So not only can we provide telehealth services, but we can also have on-demand, on-site, health and wellness services delivered directly to home. So that's one part of why we're very excited about the the digital portfolio of companies that we have. And just to touch on one other company that we had in Brazil that last year, it was a company focused on the diagnostic space, a really smart team that ended up having one of their tests be approved as a rapid 15-minute COVID test, which has opened tremendous doors for them in the digital health space as a whole in Brazil and the rest of Latin America. The third area which we're focusing on, which is newer, but it's going to become a big part of our focus, is around climate change and emergency. Really, around this circular economy, because our survival as a species, will depend on addressing this issue. So it doesn't matter if we've got a great, and disruptive, AI company or health company. If our planet is not there, it's going to make all of those other investments null and void. So climate change and the circular economy are going to become a bigger focus. And it's been estimated that that space itself is a $26 trillion opportunity. So it's a place that we want to kind of play in. So that kind of gives a bit of a overview of the type of sectors we're in, and just some examples of three companies that we're very, very excited about. Now, when you look at our team, so I'm a huge sports fan, and I believe building a company is the ultimate team sport. You really need to to have a smart group of people, people that are very good at different disciplines, because in a business you've got multiple facets of ensuring that business is a success. So at VST we've assembled, we all say some of the smartest people in the room and smartest partnerships in the world, to give not only VST the best ability and opportunity to identify these needles in the haystack, and to be able to work with and commercialize these companies, but also for our portfolio companies. We're able to provide them with some of the best partners to help and give them the best chance of success. And examples of that are, we have a partnership with here in Canada with Dr. Fakri Karai. He runs the Institute for Machine Learning and AI at Waterloo University in Ontario. And Waterloo is kind of an equivalent to an MIT in the US. It's one of the top-notch universities producing amazing comp sci engineering talent and programmers. And that partnership is very, very strategic and key, not just for VST, but all of our portfolio companies. We also have a partnership with BC Diabetes. The top and head endocrinologist there, Dr. Tom Elliott, is a leader in diabetes care and other types of chronic care. His business, his brand, his patient base have been an amazing avenue for everything we're doing in the digital health space. So again, that collaboration with people and product and data in our ecosystem is a huge strategic advantage for VST. Looking at our cap structure, so we've got about I think we did a financing in November that was a special warrant financing. I think once that's complete, we'll have about 85 million shares outstanding. I haven't checked our share price today, but I think we were trading at around 80 cents Canadian as of the end of trading day yesterday. Market cap around 60 million. I know every CEO says their business is undervalued. I think a lot of shareholders and investors that have done DD on our business, hopefully, the DD that they've been doing is verifying that fact. So it's not just us as a management team saying we're undervalued. Inside ownership is just under 30%. So I'm the largest shareholder. Seeded the company, alongside my business partner with the first, I think $10 to $12 million. So we put our money where our mouth is in this business. Haven't sold a single share, and we're long on what we're building here. And then just I love the two-way kind of communication. So I'll try to wrap up the slide deck, here with the next slide. But really looking at why invest in VST in general, or why invest now. The primary reason people invest is to make money. So Victory Square is democratizing access to the next tech giants before they're giants. Victory Square shareholders are getting ground floor access to the next set of unicorn companies before they're unicorns. That is really the fundamental why. People want to make money, and Victory Square is that avenue that allows them to do that. We've talked about all the different sectors and themes we're in. We give exposure to investors into all those themes. There was to reference something. As a child, there was a game that I used to play called Contra, and there was a cheat code in Contra that gave you 99 lives. VST shareholders, in theory, get 23 lives at knocking it out of the park, as opposed to investing in a one-dimensional company. So, the main reason why is that this gives you access to hit a home run, and it doesn't give you one chance; it gives you multiple chances at doing that. Aside from that, in investing and making money, we want to be able to feel good about what we're investing in. And one of the big things about disruptive innovation is disruptive innovation can help transform and solve some of the world's biggest problems. Good innovation, focuses on technologies and companies that are likely to have a positive impact on the environment, our society, and the world's ability to create further innovation. So, in addition to a great investment to make money, the technologies that we're working on, a lot of them also can make you feel good about what you're investing in. So, Jack, I'll probably cut that, and it might be good to kind of tie into some user feedback and
audience questions. Okay, let's get into some audience questions. You can hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, fine. Yeah, we're gonna. I think we're gonna have a lot of questions. So I was taking some notes. Shafin. So let's actually, let me just pull this. Hang on a second. Let me get this out, and yeah. So we'll go back to our normal.
Yeah.
I made some notes. So basically, Victory Square, I would call it like you're like a unicorn farm, a unicorn farm with multiple shots on goal here.
You said it. We gotta get that capped as our headline.
You're like the ARK ETF, an early stage ARK ETF. You're like the Cathie Wood, but with a beard.
Absolutely, and I love Cathie Wood. She's an amazing lady.
So it's basically the same concept. I mean, this is sort of like seed stage ARK ETF. Same right there.
Same concept, but I would say the one difference is we found a niche in undiscovered talent. So before they get onto ARK's radar, we're identifying those undiscovered talents from around the world. So ARK, Buffett always says it's not only investing in a good company, but its entry point. We found the lowest entry point in the undiscovered talent, and then ARK, very similar philosophy, but ARK would be kind of a follow-on to a lot of the companies that we invest in.
Okay, let's see. Okay. So guys, ask your questions. I think everybody was like they were hypnotized. So we usually have like a bunch of questions already here. Oh, here we go. Oh, actually, let me ask you first the question. I think before anybody else is okay. So you got there's a couple of catalysts. I think there's a couple of near term. I think which is very which I happen to like here is that you have a couple of real near term catalysts that could unleash some value. How will these spin outs work? You mentioned 2 spin outs. Are you going to dividend out the shares? How is that going to work for existing shareholders?
Yeah, so short-term catalysts, we have so much heat coming in over the next 6 months with respect to the spin out. So the 2 companies that are going to be spun out are Game On and Immersive. Right now we're exploring one of 2 options, which is to dividend out the shares or a portion of the shares to VST shareholders. That's always been one of the more primary focuses. Some of the feedback we've had from investors, though, has been instead of having them need to learn about a new story, because they've already made done their research to invest in VST, that VST should liquidate some of that position and then pay out a cash dividend. So right now, those are the two focuses that we were looking at. The third, which has kind of popped out, which is more opportunistic, is that from a VST perspective, we've started to see that we're, the validation's coming back, that we're getting a really significant ROI on our capital. So when we invest $1 into a company, we're seeing the results right now on the companies that are going to be following, in the footsteps of Fans Unite. So the other argument is to reinvest, to continue to compound the value growth of the company. So from a spin-out perspective, the main focus was to initially do a share dividend or a portion of share dividend in those companies. Some of the feedback from investors is to sell a position of the stake and cash out a dividend. So I think that's really what we're looking at right now. But the third, which is more from an opportunistic perspective, if we start to see tremendous value and opportunities to really compound this or pour gasoline on this fire, then we may reinvest in push the disruption and value even further.
Shafin, so you got started in you were basically starting the .com business in the 90s. Do you remember Safeguard Scientific? Remember that stock? That was like the hot stock, kind of similar to what you're, a little bit different. I mean, a little bit later stage, but that was like the hots, and they were basically spinning out. This was a Pete, what the hell is it? Pete Muster, Warren, that was the CEO. It was essentially a public venture business started in the 60s or 70s. Mm-hmm. And so I think, they were spinning out, all these companies, and that was the hot thing. I mean, I think if you give a share dividend, people will love it. I mean, people love, they love free gifts and they love the shares. It's like a little extra thing. I think if you do that, it's going to create massive value. I mean, you're going to have a $10 stock, I think, if you do that.
No, absolutely. Like, I mean, I'm the largest shareholder and I have no intention of selling my own stock. So for me, it's better to get a share dividend because, at least I can participate in those run-ups of the portfolio companies. But with your question regarding, Safeguard, I don't remember that company in particular, but it's interesting because during that period of time, almost all of the tech companies were public during the dot-com boom. And when the dot-com crash happened, this network of angel investment and VC, funding changed the landscape. A lot of the next-gen tech companies were private. And so as an early investor, you only had access to them if they were geographically located within your region, or you knew someone that could get you access to them. And by the time you could invest in them, they were in the market caps in the billions. And so we're seeing a shift for VST. As an investor myself, I want to get access to the next best companies early around the world, but I want to be able to do it in a public vehicle. I want to be able to be liquid. I don't want to have my money tied up, for 5 years and 10 years privately. I want it to be in something that I can buy and sell it as I see fit, based on management's performance. But also, the ability for that to know that it's audited and transparent. As a public company, we're audited, we're transparent and liquid. So those are some of the benefits where I think investors can get access to. So.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I think we're getting a lot of comments. People they want those shares. They want the shares. Be very excited because if you have the more of these spinouts you have trading, then it becomes like an ecosystem almost, and it's sort of like it would be very positive.
One note on that. So I think if investors want to do some they can see this online, but in January of 2018, we were actually exploring doing a share dividend in Fans Unite. And at that time, there was a tax, there's a tax reason why it wasn't done. But again, there's precedent that, we have actually publicly come out, suggesting that is a strategy. So I think taking your feedback and from investors, maybe I think we'll put out a vote and have investors vote on what we do. Because again,
yeah, we're getting So here's one of your big fans, Ben who got in early. He wants a combination of small amount of stock, a whole lot of reinvest. I mean, basically, people want they want that's the idea. Okay, so I guess this is my next question, kind of in terms of news flow. I guess news flow. I always ask like what kind of news flow are you going to have over the next couple of months that people can look forward to? Like what's going to be in the news pipeline?
We have so much heat coming. Like with with 23 companies, 5 of which are like controlling interest companies, we have, there's not enough days in the week for the amount of news that we have. But I would say the news that we're really going to be focused on is around the spinoff of Immersive and Game On, and everything about the introduction of team and board and product development for those two companies, which there's a massive pipeline, and then everything around our digital health side of things. There's a lot of momentum happening in that space. So I think a lot of our news will be around those 3 things over the next 90 days, and then you'll see our 2020 year end and Q1 numbers pop up for this year, and then just momentum on the other portfolio companies. There's so many companies right now in our portfolio that are doing amazing things that we just don't have enough kind of airtime to talk about them all.
Yeah, Shafin, what I like about what I like about the story is basically, usually companies that we work with, they have one business, or there might be a few kind of aspects to the story, but in your case, you have like, it's like it's like a diamond, like your name, it's got you have a very appropriate name for this company. So because there's so many facets and aspects to the company. I mean, that it's on like an endless amount. I mean, let me speak strictly from my perspective, as let's call it from the promotional aspect. It's like infinite possibilities. It's like, so the story has like infinite legs. That this can, it's very, very exciting, and the fact that you could do, share, dividends, it adds a lot. What's the so the NAV? What's your, how do you calculate the NAV right now? I mean, what's the.
Yeah, so the NAV is so there's 3 metrics we look at: cash invested, the NAV, which is kind of a snapshot in time of the current value, and what we refer to as the FAV, which is the future asset value, and that's looking at comparables and growth in those portfolio companies. The current NAV right now, I think the last time we did a NAV report was in August or July of last year. And the way those numbers came about was we looked at the last investment in each portfolio company to crystallize what their value was and what that meant to VST. If the company had not done any other additional financing, we looked at comparables in their market on a like an angel list to see what multiples were on revenues. And that's how we kind of figured it came together. In July of last year, the NAV was probably between 75 and 80 million Canadian dollars. But today we know that number is significantly higher, and I think we'll have an updated NAV coming out as our 2020 numbers are being completed. That NAV, I don't want to guess, but it is significantly higher because it doesn't include anything that any momentum in the digital health space, and it I think it values our ownership of fans at like 2 million. Like that NAV number is gonna definitely be significantly higher.
I mean, really, from the investor's perspective, I think the NAV is kind of like, it's a nice guidebook, but really that's not the value of the company. Really is the value add, that you bring, that the team brings in creating, the future valuation. So, getting all those companies. So that's, I mean, so, I don't know what the multiple should be, but it could be, 5 times NAV, whatever, because
yeah.
What's in the past is like, not really meaningful. It's where you're going, which is important. So
and on that note too, I think like one of the big validations with the spin out of Immersive and Game On is with Fans Unite, Immersive, and Game On, that shows a pattern of ROI. As us as good allocators in capital, and that in theory can be a multiple to be used against our NAV. So that's why for us it's very important over the next 60 days that those 2 companies come out, and we know they're going to perform very well. That cash investment to the snapshot on what the value is will be the multiple that we'll use to figure out our NAV, and that's why we know it's going to be significant.
Okay. So we got a bunch of questions coming in. Here's a great. Wait. This is it. Wait. Okay. Which is your favorite company? Justine, who's your favorite child?
Yeah, it's like asking me who my favorite child is. I think there's so many companies that we're super excited about. If I had to talk about my right now, the children that we're spending more attention on, we're super excited about Fans Unite. Again, great space, great board, great management team, great traction. Game On and Immersive. Again, there's consistent themes on Fans with both of those two that we're excited about. And then, Hydrate and what we're doing in the digital health space, both here in North America and in Brazil. Those four are right now, are the ones that we're spending more attention on. But you'll start to hear there's some amazing stories, other stories in sectors where there's just tremendous traction on some of the other portfolio companies.
Okay. What's the typical percentage ownership that you take?
So in the 23 companies that we have, we generally only get involved in companies where we take a material stake, which is a minimum of around 20 to 23% is at the low end. We act as a co-founder. So before we make an investment, we already know that we have a solution or a pain point that this company is going to solve for us. And we roll up our sleeves and get active. So for the majority of those companies, the ownership stake is at least 20 to 23% from a material perspective. About 5 of the companies in our portfolio, we have a controlling stake, which is over 50. But and then there are probably 2 or 3 that the number is under 10%. But generally, material stake of 20 to 23% at the minimum.
Okay. Again, yeah, I think I don't even know if I asked this. Yeah, I think a lot of people want those share. Are you going to do the share dividends? A lot of people want the share dividends. It seems like.
Yeah, I think one of the questions you asked earlier, I think from one of the viewers, Ben Baker, I think you mentioned his name. He talked about a combination of of a share dividend, a small share dividend, but to reinvest the cash. My gut tells me that's going to be where we see the biggest value for VST, and which ultimately will benefit shareholders, is to dividend up some of the share perspective, which again is great for the portfolio companies to give them a built-in kind of audience, but to reinvest, because again, we're seeing tremendous opportunities from around the world, great entry points, great companies that we think, again, all will be 10, 20x for VST. So, we don't want to lose out on those opportunities for shareholders. We're long on this, right? So,
so we get a question. Are you any future financing rounds?
So right now, the company is got tremendous access to cash. There's probably $4 to $5 million in the till right now. We operate very lean. I think our burns maybe like 65, 70 grand a month, like super minimal. And if we see opportunity, I've always in the past, I set up a $10 million convertible note that the business has access to for opportunities in a timely fashion if need be. Now, if we see our share price appreciate and we feel like there's a great entry point to position some other institutional investors, they're going to create value over time, then we'll explore additional rounds of financing. But when we did a financing last year, is because it was one of our goals last year was to diversify our investor base and start to get family offices and institutions onto the story early, because we know over the next 5-10 years they're going to be strategic if they've got a position in.
Yeah, and they could bring you deals. It's good to have
absolutely
partners. What are the biggest challenges that you're facing in 21 this year?
2020 was at the beginning of that year. That's where we felt that we were going to have a tremendous number of challenges, and I think that what we saw, how we saw our team and our portfolio companies kind of rise up to the occasion and go on the offense as opposed to being in the fetal position when COVID hit, I think really prepared us for any sort of white or black swan event that's coming. From a strategic perspective,
actually, all your businesses are a benefit from COVID.
They do.
Yeah.
They did, and they're recession-proof businesses, right? Yeah. Like gambling, health, gaming. They're all protect against those types of downs. But I think if I had to look at this from, from an investment perspective, history repeats itself, and over the last, 3 decades, I've seen, bubbles form and then a correction and pullback happen. And before COVID, we had strategically been expecting that. And so we ensured that our companies were in a strong cash position, and that actually helped us when COVID hit. But because we thought there's going to be a pullback and a potential recession, because we'd been riding one of the biggest bull market rides of in history. What we didn't expect during COVID is for the markets to keep rising. Yeah, and so, but from a company perspective, this is how, from a challenge, the challenge we're looking at is about ensuring that we're ready for anything. That we're prepared. Our companies are in a good cash position. The product and teams are sound. They're preparing for the worst, but they're also ready to accelerate if things keep going. And I think that's that from a challenge perspective, we met that challenge last year, and it's really kind of put us in a good position to be ready for anything. If there's a pullback, great. We'll go on the offense and go after all the distressed assets to further accelerate, because we know that if there's a pullback, eventually it's going to come back again, and that's kind of how we're approaching any sort of challenge that gets thrown at us.
Do you have any analyst coverage right now?
I'm not aware of any analyst coverage as of now. I believe that's going to change over the next couple of quarters. I think when our 2020 numbers come out, I think that's what's going to really, because they're audited as well, that's what's really going to get us on the radar of a lot of analysts. For a small cap company or a company trading on the CSE exchange to have to deliver the type of results that we have and positive earnings per share that we have, and consistently, I think that's going to those numbers, when those numbers come out, will get covered.
So I guess we have a comment here. So yeah, so I guess he's saying all you need is 1 or 2 of these things to be unicorns. I think if you have you do a little dividend, share dividend, that'll and then you keep something that'll be very I mean, is there any reason why the stock can't be, I don't know, $5 by April?
No, there's no reason. I mean, I think the comment you just pointed out, we didn't set out to build $100 million company. We set out to build $1 billion company, and that's why this approach of having 23 lives, 23 shots at it. When you're looking at disruptive technology like platforms that are going to be trillion-dollar platforms, that's why we're going at in the sectors we're at. That's why we're going to the spaces we're at, and that's why we have the depth of portfolio companies that we're at. So there's absolutely no reason why we can't be at that dollar value per share, and that's our goal.
By
our
April.
goal is
by April.
Oh, by April. Oh, so by well, I mean, to me, I mean, we realize we can't control the share price.
Right.
What we can control is continue to execute at a high level. Eventually, men lie, numbers lie. Sorry, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So eventually, someone's going to get wind of those numbers. And for us, can't stop, won't stop. Like, we're just going to keep forging ahead, and someone's going to, people will jump on at whatever point they do. Whether it's April, March, Q3, Q4, it's not going to impact us. We're cashed up. We've got 23 portfolio companies in the hopper, and we're ready to rock and roll.
Interesting question. What do you feel is a fair market value based on the financials? $10 a share. What should the stock? Actually, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
About the financial, what should the stock be worth right now, in your opinion? And you give us an honest answer. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. I'm saying it doesn't have to be $10.
I don't even know if I can answer this question without getting into trouble.
Yeah.
So let's
stop.
Well, yeah. Well, if I had to give you, to kind of back this up, I would. Our goal. So within our financial models internally, and between you and just all of us on this report right now, we did internal modeling on 3 figures: our cash invested, in July we did this, our NAV. So what the current value of those assets are, and based kind of on how we found NAV, and what the future asset value is, and in looking at the growth on each of the portfolio companies to see where they may be trading. That future asset value, as of July of last year, was around, it was over, I think around over $200 million maybe 250, 260 million dollars, which I think at that point with our share count at that level, you know, was around $4 a share. Now that's our internal modeling. That's what we use to, you know, to mark our numbers on a, on a quarterly and annual basis towards we want us to keep going forward on. Now that number has changed because, you know, the companies in that portfolio have continued to grow. Some have grown at, you know, greater rates than others. But, you know, if I had to justify, you know, numbers that we've looked at from our financial models, that's kind of where we've been seeing it.
Okay. I mean, you know, with this, you know, with the current valuation, I mean, you know, what is it? You know, 70, what is it? What's the market cap now? 70 million or something based on today's price?
I think it's around 60 million Canadian.
Canadian, yeah. So like, you know, so I mean, all you need is like one tiny success that pays for the whole company, basically. I mean, that's like, I mean, there could be, I mean, there could be like five. There could be five of those built in. That's why I'm coming up with this like $5 number. Well, I guess two reasons. One is, you know, I mean, I'm looking, you know, I'm looking for those companies which have that 10x upside. But at the same time, you do have like built-in catalysts in the company. You have some built-in stuff that could be, you know, so it's a very easy path to get there based on the.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at Fans United as one example. That's just one. And then you'll see the pedigree.
Well, Sheffield, when Fans, let's say, okay, so you own how many shares of Fans does?
We have about 8%. We have about 8%.
How many shares is that? How many shares do you have?
I think it's between 12 and 14 million shares, I think.
Okay, so 14 million. So let's say, okay, so Fans goes to, you know, 250, which I think it's going to be there in the next, like within the next few months. I think it's going to be at least 250. So that, you know, that in itself is, what is it? That's
like $30 million.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's a nice, that adds 15. Yeah, that's one. Yeah. So there's a lot of catalysts. Okay, let's see if we have.
And Jack, to your point, you know, when we talk about immersive, like there's a comparable, and I think you may have actually had them on, but Next AR Tech. I mean, they're trading at a $500 million market cap. Immersive again would be, you know, very, you know, comparative to that. That's a company that's wholly owned under the hopper. So, you know, 7-figure revenues, year-over-year growth, Fortune 500 clients, you know, new product release.
100% of this immersive.
100%.
100%. And how much are they doing in revenues right now, approximately?
So they're I think they're just under 3 million in the last annual year.
And it's pure AR.
It's VR and AR.
So VR and AR. Okay, so yeah. So, you know, I mean, it's a lot. It's basically a lot more revenues than, you know, some of other companies we've had in the AR space, pure AR. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to. Yeah. I want to say diplomatic. I want to say, but it's a. I mean, it's a substantial amount. I think. Yeah, and so there's a lot of interesting catalysts. That's kind of what I like about the story. I mean, I'm a little bit biased. I like this story because you got so many things to talk about. Let's see here. We got any more questions here? I think we gotta wrap up here. Okay, so let's just cover. Okay, when 2020 earnings, when is that coming out?
I believe they're coming out in April.
Okay. So Shafin, let's kind of wrap up here. You have news flow over the next couple of weeks, months. You have stuff in the pipeline.
We have news flow, next days, weeks, months, years.
Okay, and okay, I'm going to ask you last question. We ask everybody, and in your opinion, top 3 reasons why investors should consider Victory Square shares right now.
Well, I think we kind of touched upon that. Investors are investing, the primary reason investors are investing right now is to make money. We give them access to, we give them ground floor access, to the next set of unicorn companies before they're unicorn companies. These are we're democratizing access for investors to this. So the primary reason to invest now is there are 23 chances of hitting a unicorn. That's why I would say right now is the time to invest. Coupled with the fact that I think the entry point for VST is great right now. And the second part of investing now and being a part of a ride that's just getting started is also the fact that we're investing in disruptive technology. So we're giving investors access to a wide variety of themes, but as opposed to having them independent, they're getting them all under one hood. So they get access to any movement in digital health, any movement in blockchain, any movement in AR and VR, any movement in gaming, any movements in cybersecurity, all under one hood. And a lot of those disruptive technologies that we're building, people can feel good about what they're investing in, because a lot of our companies are solving pain points that are going to make the world a better place. So you can make money and you can feel good about making money.
Yeah, I mean, you're in all the right themes right now, all the right themes at the right time. So fantastic. Okay, Shafin, we'll catch up with you next week. We'll hopefully we'll be able to have time to answer questions. We'll go into some details, like some detailed conversations about the upcoming companies, and we'll thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you all on the next live stream.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for the next one, I think if viewers have questions that they want us to dive deeper into, they can send them to you or us, and we can really go and answer the questions that people want to really know more about.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Thank you, guys. Okay.
Thank you.